the first to know in Nsem-Pii TV.
Tifo Bekaya, Enra, President John Dramani Mahama, any media engage and sentry be a bisana sem say Chief Justice Eko say easy Mokase Obeko NDC Amayuko, even the General Secretary and the Chairman of the NDC Eka says so Chief Justice no wobetimu akọ na Electoral Commission wobekọ enti sei mo yi Chief Justice na wie na Electoral Commission no so wobekọ na won kwa abusia sa answers no President John Dramani Mahama etim ewon wanye ene de fa Chief Justice de no ho a wantimu ama emuaye papa bia amfanche Ghana for ene journalist ya endura womutim ekopim o media engagement ho na menoka say lawyer Paul Adom Otchere atimu abechire dintia President John Dramani Mahama wantimu amade exact answer na de na Ghana for ana de na media for no ehia se wo ese waka no wantimu anka na menonko na ensema hodo bia efa the removal of Chief Justice no ho ne kwan a John Dramani Mahama wafa so na wo de sansam no wanye abra na media for no ebisa na sansam no ko na kokko TV na busia lawyer Paul Adom Otchere jese owura no wasua nwoma kwanya wafaso na sansem we no Chief Justice Torkornoo nsem we no watimu adwudwam na media no so say wo ma very disappointed in President John Dramani Mahama sansam no wantimu amomo the accurate answer na wo mohwehwe no mame no nko na wankasa kokko TV ne ba Nsem-Pii TV unity for ebeto aso.
But the judiciary is the third arm of government, and to remove the head of the judiciary, and when you are the one operating the article, being the head of the executive, given all the background that we have had, the conversations about this Chief Justice and how the decisions that she has made in court, sitting with other people, have become a matter for her impeachment. So if you look at the concerns of, say, the three vacant seats in Parliament, the controversy about whether they were vacant or not, the matter went to court. The Supreme Court gave an unanimous ruling. Justice Torkornoo happened to either lead the panel that day or was part of it. The cases about Sal, Justice Torkornoo is not the only one who did it. Justice Yawa Pao, in fact, who is quite friendly to the NDC, gave the first major judgment against Sal. It was a unanimous decision in which Torkornoo was part of it. Then she was not even Chief Justice at the time. So these are the things that have been examples that have been said by NDC legal luminaries, raising the concerns that a Chief Justice should be removed. If you look at the process that removed her, there's actually one that is quite bothering, and it is about she asking somebody to go on leave. And a Chief Justice is the head of the administration of the judiciary. She actually asked judges to go on leave. Apart from the Supreme Court, which only sits in Accra, and even that, she can ask a Supreme Court judge to hear a High Court matter in 2nd, and the Supreme Court judge will be obliged to hear the matter in 2nd and come back. But the Supreme Court sits in only Accra, so they're not in Kumasi. The Court of Appeal, there are judges in Kumasi. The Chief Justice can transfer as high up a person in the judiciary as a Court of Appeal judge to anywhere, and can transfer all the way to circuit. That's her job. So if she's quote unquote prosecuted for getting somebody to transfer somebody, and the media have not had the opportunity to look at why was the person transferred, and I'm sure that when the matters come out and the media see why the person was transferred, it will be very shocking. I cannot talk about it now because we still don't know whether under Article 146 process, when the matter is over, you can talk about it.
The committee that sat on it,
that you can talk about it, but I don't know.
The committee that sat on it raised concerns that they had to review 10,000 pages when it comes to evidence brought against the Chief Justice. And then they gave that recommendation to the president that indeed she must go. You feel that they failed to do their job?
I don't know whether they failed to do their job or not, but most of the 10,000 cases that they refer to, which I'm not sure why we can't see it. Pages, which I'm not sure why we can't, because we've heard that we can't see it. Most of it must have come from the Chief Justice, according to what her lawyers are saying, that most of those documents were documents that they submitted. They called the highest number of witnesses, and there are conversations that they actually even subpoenaed people. The people came there and they were not allowed to speak by the chairman of the committee and the committee's rulings. So they really have a story to tell. And if you listen to Newsfile last Saturday, you see the outrage of Ayikwe Otu, which was unfortunate, I have to say. But you can understand his outrage, being a former Attorney General, a seasoned legal luminary, and seeing that some of the fundamental procedures were overlooked, overstepped, and just beaten up. at the committee process. He was quite concerned. So it begs the question that this Article 146 process, which we thought we will never need it to remove a chief justice, there is an impeachment of a president. We have said that we will never need it. And that is because the president is given a political protection. The political protection in the president's removal is such that whenever the decision is made, Parliament must by 2/3 elect for the president to be impeached. So we assume that whenever somebody is president, he's very likely to have the Parliament. But come 2028, we may very well have a situation where the NPP may win the presidency, but the deficit in Parliament might not be recovered in the same election. So you can go into the Parliament with NDC leading by 10 or 20 or something, and the NPP have the presidency. It is then that the threat to that presidential impeachment will come up, because it's very easy to get in fact, it's easier to get the president than the chief justice in 146. Because in the president's process, it says that if he has taken any decision that economically doesn't benefit Ghana, and we can find $1 million in a president's tenure of 4 years, you can find Akufo-Addo impeachment for e-levy. He took the decision for e-levy. It didn't economically benefit Ghana. How do you know whether it benefited Ghana economically or not? You just do a vox pop, and everybody will say that I don't like e-levy, I don't like e-levy. Okay, Mr. President, you took a decision, let's start the process. But the president always knows that Parliament will be for him. But one day, Parliament may not be for the president of Ghana. And that is a plausible outcome in the constitutional arrangement that we have. And then we will see what happens. But that process is put there not so that we can impeach the president. It's put there so that in the extreme of extreme cases, there's something for us to pick and look at. We don't put Article 146 there so that every now and then we are tinkering with removing the Chief Justice, and my party comes, I remove Chief Justice, and my party comes. I mean, we all miss Professor Mills. There was significant pressure on him in 2009, and led by Alhaji Bature, who's passed with eternal glory, may he rest in peace. But Alhaji and others heaped significant pressure on Professor Mills to the point where the president had to come out publicly to say that I am not interested in proceeding with an Article 146 process to remove Georgina Wood. I will not do that. And then in the subsequent press conference, the chairman of the party, once again, chairman of the NDC, at that time, Johnson Asedun Katia was general secretary. The chairman was a man they call YOC, my very good friend, Kwabena J, may he rest in peace. He used to be member of parliament for the MPP in 79, and then he became NDC and became his chairman. Kwabena J was asked at a press conference that now that the president says that he's not going to remove the chief judge, what would you do? And he meted out the famous words which President Mahama had occasion to refer to last night. He said, there are many ways of killing a cat. That's what he said. That there are many ways of killing a cat. And that's what President Mahama was referring to yesterday, saying he's not a cat hunter or something like that.
Exactly.
But this is the history we have come from. And we would have thought that having achieved this kind of measured precedent in 2009, that perhaps we have put that to some extent behind us. But here we are. We have had a situation where Article 146 has had to be invoked, not against a chief justice who has done something really sacrilegious in terms of the administration of justice, say telling a judge that don't rule this way, if you rule this way, I'll do this, trying to offer money to a judge that's ruled this way, shifting a judge around.
At this point, there are concerns that we should raise the bar when it comes to the amendments of our laws to ensure that the removal of key individuals like the chief justice, the president, for example, is very difficult, even if you're going to go through the legal route.
But it is difficult. As it is very difficult. But you have people hiding behind in camera and say that we can't talk about it. We don't want to publish it on television. We don't want to show a lot of the confidence that has occasioned the Ghanaian judiciary, which has helped in the democracy, came in 2013 when the election petition was showed on television. It started in America when the O.J. Simpson trial was showed on television. These things engender confidence in the judiciary, the judicial systems, and encourages young people. There are many lawyers today who will tell you that they became lawyers when they watched the election. They wanted to become lawyers when they watched the election petition.
So we should make the whole process public.
If you go to America, many of a certain generation of their lawyers decided to be lawyers when they watched the O.J. Simpson trial. Mm-hmm. So these things are very important. It engenders confidence. And so the Chief Justice went to Supreme Court applying that in spite of the in-camera process, which is to protect the subject, really, she is the subject, she thinks she doesn't need that protection. Can we show it on television? It would have done a lot of good to the process. But somehow or rather, somebody didn't want that exposed. And that's the beginning of the deep thinking and the beginning of where the overthinking political analysts now begin to think, why doesn't somebody want who loses when the thing comes on television? And that's a decision.
But if her request is against the law, when the law is clear that some of these cases should be held behind the cameras to ensure that we protect the sanctity of even the position in itself, depending on the issues that will come out.
There's precedent for that. There's precedent for that, not in the statutory law, but there's precedent for that in case law. In the election petition, the actual application had gone to the Supreme Court for the matter to be showed live on television. The Supreme Court had denied the application, I believe, by a 5-2. Had denied the application. Chief Justice Georgina Wood decided to apply an administrative fiat to determine on her own that the thing should be showed on television. If the thing showed on television occasioned financial loss to the state, for instance, today we can prosecute Georgina Wood for occasioning financial loss to the state because she decided against case law. Case law said you can't do it, and they raised all of these issues. Court is this, court is that. That was the Supreme Court decision. She wasn't a member of the panel. She took a decision later on, but it doesn't matter. In the interest of democracy, I think we should do this. Called Ghana Television. It was going to cost a lot of money. The Judicial Service were to pay that money, and Justice Georgina Wood decided, let's show it. So yes, that's why the Chief Justice went to the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court have the power to look at these things and make decisions in favor of democracy and development, in favor of the deepening of accountability, and in favor of building our own democracy. They could have made that decision, because really, who loses when some of these things come public? When we watched the election petition, it was a win-win-win-win for everyone. Nobody lost. The electoral processes were better defined. We came in with stronger rules. That's why we brought in all this BVMR, or all of those things. And the electoral process was supposed to be better thereafter. So once this Article 146 process did not see the light of day for the exposure for people to see it, it began to raise questions. And then at the end of it, listening to the lawyers of the Chief Justice, it's unfortunate that perhaps the members of the committee don't want to speak, or they cannot speak because we don't have their side of the story. Yes. So everything we are hearing is one side of the story anyway. I have to admit that at the outset, because we really have to hear the other side of the story. But the kinds of things being said, if it happened, even if there are exaggerations and that it did happen, then we really have a lot to look at under the Article 146 process that removed Justice Torkornoo.
And that should be a job for the Constitutional Review Committee.
I don't think they can do much about it, and I've been hearing that, because Article 146 is an entrenched clause, and once an entrenched clause, there's a clear way to amend entrenched clauses, and Parliament has nothing to do with it. I think people don't seem to realize that when an article is entrenched, Parliament has absolutely nothing to do with it in whether it is changed or not. It is just laid before Parliament, if you look at the rules in the Constitution itself, and then it passes to a referendum where 75% of the registered voters must vote, and a certain percentage must vote for the new bill, and then it's passed. Parliament will just pass it. They don't have anything to do with it. So you can have all the members of Parliament. If you want to do a constitutional amendment of an entrenched provision, you still need to go through the referendum process only. And I do not see how many more provisions in the Constitution today that are not entrenched that can have a 2/3 passage. Those that 2/3 can pass, I think we've done them already. The citizenship one, the minimal one we did, and etc. What is left in the Constitution? The major talking points, ministers and whether they will come from Parliament or not, an entrenched provision. Everything about the executive is an entrenched provision. Those who are worried about third term and all of that is an entrenched provision. Article 146 is part of the judicial side that is entrenched. So they would have to take Article 146 over to a referendum, and I don't know whether they're going to say amend this and change this or remove it completely. You can't remove it completely, because you can't have a situation where there is no way to remove a Chief Justice. No, you can't have that. That doesn't set the balance of scale in constitutional jurisprudence. There has to be a way in which you can remove somebody, but you don't tinker with it often. You do it once in 100 years, because in terms of checks and balances, nobody is above the law, and so there has to be a limitation on every power that is exercised under the law.
Okay, let's